very good point there, David. I'll pat you on the head.
Thank you.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax. HIPAA help is on the way.
Hey y'all, this is Tyler Watson with Specialty Orthopedics in Gainesville, Georgia, and you are listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast.
Thank you for that intro and welcome to the podcast. My name is David Sims of HIPAA for MSPs and Security First IT, and joining me is Donna Griddle from Carden, that company that does compliance.
Carden is in the house.
What's going on, Donna?
Lots of stuff. Busy. Trying to get ready to go down and visit some friends in St. Petersburg, Florida.
Yeah. It's you're not going down during hurricane season this time?
Look, it doesn't really matter to me because a lot of the hurricanes hit us anyway. My experience boarding up in Key West before Irma hit down there and then coming up here and having Irma hit me here, it really makes me not worry about the hurricanes. You deal with what you got to deal with when you need to deal with it.
That's a lot of dealing.
That's right. It's like documentation, man.
I know. So today we're going to dive into 7 questions to ask your outsourced IT team. And,
yeah. David got excited about this one.
I know. I'm like, hey, talking IT. Well, it's interesting when we have conversations with prospects and even sometimes clients where they don't really know what to ask. And even the questions they do ask, I'm thinking to myself sometimes, I'm like, that's not really the questions you should be asking. That's not really important. This is what's important. You need to be asking these questions. And so oftentimes I find myself actually guiding our prospects through the interview process. It's like, these are the questions you should be asking me. And so we're going to cover some of those today in today's podcast. But first, do you have any places that you got coming up that you're going to be?
I think, Tosca, which we've talked about several times. That one's still on the hook, and I'm already starting to plan things for the spring. So in discussions for that, we'll see.
All right. And guess what?
What?
We have dates for the HIPAA boot camp.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yes.
Dun. So, yes, we do. And it has been jumping through hoops to find dates that work for all of us and the Smoke Rise Country Club where we host the event. Woo. So, do you remember what the dates are, David?
November something and something. I think it's 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Is that right?
No, that's absolutely wrong.
We threw around so many, I can't remember what we settled on.
It's because of all the scheduling issues, we've had to change our format from being Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to being Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which it makes it in the middle of the week. And we don't know whether that's a positive or a negative, but it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, the 5th, 6th, and 7th of November.
That was close.
So the first Tuesday in November. It's also the first Tuesday after daylight saving time ends. So none of us will know who we are.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, fall back. So anyways, all the information, by the time this episode comes out, all the information should be on the web. And you can go to the Help Me with HIPAA site and get to it there. You can go to the Carden HQ site, get to it there. Or you can go to the HIPAAbootcamp.com. So right now we don't have all the pricing timing worked out, but there will be an early bird.
A nerdy bird. There'll be a nerdy bird price.
Oh, nerdy bird. Let's call it that. Nerdy bird. But we've done some things trying to work with the pricing. We're constantly trying to tweak it and make it cheaper for us so it can be cheaper for you. And we're trying some new ideas this time, trying to drive the cost down. So I think the retail, if you will, price will be around $2,000, which will bring down our early bird price to Somewhere around, what, 1,600, David?
It'll be 1995. I don't know.
It's for you today, special.
Yeah. But wait, there's more.
If you dial right now.
Yeah, operators are waiting.
Yeah. So that is the news on the boot camp and all the people that, I just clicked onto my email and somebody sent me an email that starts with HIPAA. So I'm just going to have to not click on my email accidentally when I'm going back and forth from my calendar. Anyway, so all you folks that said, please let me know, we're going to try to remember to find them all, email everybody, let you know, thehippabootcamp.com.
Yep.
November. What is it, David?
5, 6, 7.
Very good, young man. Very good. So it's
there.
a Tuesday, Wednesday, a Thursday.
Yeah.
All right. So have your fun, people. Looking forward to seeing you.
All right. So on a previous episode, we answered a question about, somebody having access to an office and whether or not it made them a BAA or not.
Whether the landlord was a BA.
Right. And so we had another question come in and the listener said, what if the landlord has a key? Should they be a business associate?
So no, because it's not just the landlord's job does not require them to come in with that key on a regular basis. That's an emergency only situation. So their job they're providing for you does not require them to access PHI, just simply open a door. Now, if they go in and access PHI, hopefully some of your other contracts will put them in major violation because then they're being a criminal.
Mm-hmm.
You hope that somewhere in your contract it says you understand that we have confidential information in here, and if you do enter without us with you, blah, 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 you can put that in the contract if you're really worried about your landlord. And, so some people may be in that position that they really have to worry about their landlord stealing from them.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be what that entails is if the landlord did do that, they are stealing from you. They're not violating a business associate agreement.
Yep. And
I would consider another landlord.
Yeah. Well, they can't be a business associate anyway as a landlord because they're not doing any of the 4 functions of a business associate as it pertains to providing services to the covered entity.
Right. The service they provide is a lease on the space and the things that you're not buying or leasing that space simply to store PHI. You're doing a whole lot more there. And in fact, it's probably not even a thing that the landlord understands. And if it's a medical building, they would. But now when you go to some of these other areas, it's whether or not you control the access. But if you're in a situation where you're concerned about the landlord, I would definitely evaluate that seriously and consider some things you could put in play, because you could lock the doors inside to like certain rooms and the landlord wouldn't be able to get in. So There you go.
There you go.
There you have it.
All right. Well, before we get into today's topic, make sure you head on over to iTunes, rate and review the podcast. We absolutely appreciate it. And now
It's
a word.
not iTunes anymore. It's Apple Podcasts.
Oh, really? They changed the name of it?
Yeah, they're ditching the whole iTunes thing.
Huh.
So, yeah. I keep trying to catch you up on that, but you don't pay attention because it's Apple.
No, I don't. It's Apple.
Yeah,
About that.
All right, moving right along, you fruity thing.
All right. Here's a word from our sponsors.
2/3 of small businesses that experience a cybersecurity breach end up closing their doors within 6 months. Cyber criminals are targeting your practice and coming after your most sensitive data. Visit us online and schedule a time to talk about what you can do to protect yourself, your patients, and your practice. Our website is securityfirstit.com. That's securityfirstit.com.
Does your business work with medical practices? As a medical practice business associate, do you realize that if you have access to patient information, you have to follow the same HIPAA rules as your client? Call Carden today at 678-292-5001 so they can assess your privacy and security practices to help ensure you are protected and prepared. Visit cardenhq.com to learn more. All right, and we're back. Let's go over the 7 questions that you should definitely be asking your outsourced IT team. Should we start by qualifying why it's outsourced?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and lay that part out, because we already had that discussion.
Well, an outsourced IT team, often called a managed service provider, MSP, is a company that you would hire to come in and do IT work. Now, there are other companies that say that they're doing your IT work, like EHR companies sometimes.
Copier companies.
Copier companies, all this stuff. But if you have an IT team that's internal, then a lot of these questions we're going to go over, I don't know that they could answer the questions. And if they can, they probably don't have control over what these things are. And so you should be able to get the answers from somebody within the company and not maybe directly from IT. And so,
somebody in your organization needs to be able to answer these questions, or your outsourced IT team.
Correct.
How's that?
I like that. We'll go with that.
Thanks for allowing it.
All right, number 1. What training does your compliance officer have? Also, what training do you provide your workforce?
Yeah, these are not simple. They are complex questions.
Yep. Yeah, it's a 2-part question. So it's one question, but basically you want to look at what kind of training are you getting?
Because, the number of times that we'll look at any kind of BA and we'll say, what training does your compliance officer have? And the answer, I swear to you, is the HHS Security 101 training on their website that was published when the security rule was announced.
Not good.
Right. And that is the training their compliance officers had.
Well, some other answers you may get is compliance officer. We have to have a compliance officer.
Here's the thing though, when you're looking at these answers, you don't have to know if they're giving you all kinds of technical terms and all of that. Don't worry about that. Read it and see if it looks like BS. Or if they're like ranting and raving with their answers and insulted that you're even asking, red flag.
True.
They should be able to answer these questions. But the thing that we run into a lot that is concerning is if you use for your HIPAA quote training, the training we get is we do some online web tool that's 45 minutes and everybody watches the same video every year and check the box. So if they're doing that for them, what do you think they're going to do for you? Number 1. Number 2, if the compliance officer also gets that training, hello.
Yeah. Your compliance officer should be getting a lot more training than your standard workforce.
Exactly. And if they don't understand it, how can you be sure they're doing the right things for you? If they're not invested in learning everything that needs to be done and they're treating it like they already know everything, then it doesn't require any special training. What do you think you're getting for your compliance requirements? Because IT is so deep embedded in your compliance program, they need to know more than just the basic stuff that I can get in a 45-minute video that everybody watches and the compliance officer getting the same training. If everybody watches a 45-minute video, but you've got a well-trained compliance officer, I'm not too worried about it. You know what I mean? Because that means they're training them.
Yeah.
That's why you ask the 2 different things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even in our company, the technicians go through, the HIPAA boot camp and all that, but they have, they're nowhere near the level of what I'm going to know. And right. I'm a compliance officer and all this other stuff. But
really?
So I don't expect them. Yeah. I don't expect them to know the level I know, but I expect them to know more than the basics.
Well, and when you tell them something, you expect them to understand what you're saying.
Right. They should know enough to know, I need to ask David.
Exactly. So that's what you're looking for on those answers, is to see that they're investing and truly understanding what's required for you. If they're blowing it off, then they don't care about themselves, but they also don't care about what you need. And that's one of the things we reinforce in all of our training when we're working with tech people is you need to understand what your clients need at a deep level. And if you're blowing it off for you, you're blowing it off for them too. You don't truly understand it.
Mm-hmm.
I assure
agree.
you, David and I have more than 45-minute video training every year.
Yeah, quite a bit.
Yeah, a bit more.
The other side of this too is when you start talking to MSPs as we go through this list, you may want to understand where they're getting some of this stuff from. And when I say that, I mean, oftentimes MSPs will outsource a lot of these things. And so you want to understand, are you doing these things in-house, or are you outsourcing to another company? And then try to understand what that looks like. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying that if they are doing the minimum amount for their company and then expecting another company to come in and do the other stuff, that you need to have that weigh into your decision as to whether or not you want to continue doing business with them or not.
Yeah, because again, they're trying to do check the box minimum effort. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're looking for in your business? Because if you're not going to do check the box minimum effort, why would you want somebody that is so deeply embedded in your program doing check the box minimum effort?
Yep. Yeah, it's going to be a problem. Mm-hmm. And funny, kind of a side note, I often see in the IT forums online, IT people will complain that they're trying to get a covered entity to agree to do compliance or to agree to a new firewall or something like that. And then they're like, they won't agree to do this. They're not in compliance. I can't do business with them because of that. And then if I ask the question like, well, what are you doing for compliance? And it's just crickets.
Exactly.
And I'm like, so you're super mad at your client for not following HIPAA, but you're not doing it either.
That's another reason you want to know this. Because if they're telling you have to do this to be compliant, but they aren't doing the work to know what that is, that sounds like an infinite loop.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of problems there. All right. Number two question. Are any of your downstream business associates offshore, or do you or your business associates outsource offshore?
Now, this one's a tricky one.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're looking for in this answer is, first of all, you really hope that there's no offshore for them, because if they're immediately taking everything offshore, that's another red flag to me, unless I can see how much effort they've put in to making sure that this thing is nailed down.
Yeah, because there's a few different things they can do offshore. You have the fact that they can have their own staff offshore, which is more and more common nowadays. People hiring people outside the United States. They can have their help desk outsourced offshore, and they can also have their backups going offshore.
All of those things are reasons for you to question, how are they making sure that all of that occurs over there, wherever over there is going to be held to the HIPAA standards.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember, we've talked about offshoring before, and I understand how important it is and the cost savings and all of that, but it's tricky because, and I've seen like what some health plans do to offshore things, and it's like we have to have our own special room, and there have to be security cameras, and there have to be, only certain people are allowed in the room, and they have to go through all these things to get in the room, and they can't work anywhere else except in that room, and so it must be like being in a prison to work for them, but it's something where they feel like they've dealt with all the risks.
Right.
And it's pretty impressive. It's the most impressive version of offshoring I've ever seen. So, it can be done well.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not even thinking about it, then again, they're checking the box and not worrying about you.
Right.
They signed a BAA.
Yeah. And then you also have to consider, okay, if my IT company is sending things offshore, then do those people that are offshore, are they getting HIPAA training? Do they understand what you're dealing with and what that means to you and for you? Don't know.
And they could be, the people offshore could be the ones that are just, you got to sign the BAA to do the work. Just sign it.
Yeah. I mean, we still have that here in the States.
I know. But over there, U.S. law doesn't pertain to us anyway. They can't do anything to us. So go ahead and sign it. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure they do GDPR. They don't have to do HIPAA.
No, not most of these places they outsource. But you also have to worry about, are they vetting who's outsourcing that they buy from? So, David, you'll have to explain some of that, the BAs of IT companies, MSPs, and how that offshoring can happen.
Well, I have the ability through certain vendors, I can tap into their offshore team if I wanted to. So if I want to have a team that's offshore that's answering my support tickets, in the evenings or all the time, really, if I wanted to, and then they can remote into my clients' machines and they can address these support tickets that are coming in and all that. So I'm not hiring the outsourced company directly. I'm doing it through a third party vendor who's doing it, who's bringing in that team. And so that's just one way it can happen.
Well, and the data centers and, I'm buying this backup service that's cloud backup. Where's the data center located?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we ask those questions, but I am starting to see more and more of the vendors coming forth with that information up front. So even during the initial conversation, they're saying, oh, our data centers are all US or whatever. So because it is becoming a question that more and more people are asking. So they're trying to get up front with that. But it's certainly something you should know because there's a lot of people who do send stuff. And if they say something like, well, it's hosted in Amazon Cloud or it's hosted on Google Cloud, that doesn't make it US based.
No, you have to specifically require that. You have the option of asking for US based. And you have to have a contract for U.S. based only. So if you, as a vendor, do not make sure that you are doing that, your stuff could accidentally end up in another country. Because these data centers are all over the place. And if you don't specify U.S., they have the option to put it wherever they have room.
True.
Move it around. They don't care.
True.
So it's important to understand what your BA is thinking about offshoring and how much they're vetting their BAs about offshoring. So what we're saying here is it's not wrong if you do it properly. But if you're just not caring, it is wrong because you're not thinking it through and it has different concerns. There should be a risk analysis that evaluates all the risk, and then you decide whether or not you can address them all with the contracts and the requirements that you have.
I agree.
Well, thank you, David. That's very kind.
That leads us into number 3. Everybody's writing down, pull over on the side of the road, write this one down. What is your instant response plan for addressing a client hit with ransomware?
Did you say incident or instant?
I said incident.
No, you said instant.
Okay, what is your instant response plan? Because when it happens, you better be there in an instant.
Yeah, so what you're looking for here is you want to know that they've thought about it. And hopefully if this is a vendor that you've dealt with for a long time, you're already driving that they have a plan and they're part of your plan and all of this. But if it's one that you're looking at as a potential new partner, or one that you haven't had very long, or if you're just getting started with your plans, this, as we've talked about probably the last 4 or 5 episodes, I think incident response has come into it multiple times, is the importance of having a plan. You know, we just talked about the data breach cost, and the 2 of the top 6 ways to reduce costs is have a plan and test the plan.
Yeah.
And then compliance failures and rush to notify are 2 of the ways to make it more expensive.
Yeah.
So
And I wouldn't ask if you have a plan. I would want to know what the plan is. You don't necessarily need to send me the plan, because then you get, people like, oh, I can't tell you that. Even I don't understand why, but I would still want to know what are some details of your incident response plan, because, we know in healthcare, we can't just come in and what we call in IT, nuke and pave. Can't just come in and erase everything, get rid of the problem, put the operating system back on, and then you're good to go.
Yeah. We've talked about that over and over with dwell time. They should be worried about those things. But more importantly, what you want to look for is that the incident response for any kind of malware, whatever, but we say ransomware here specifically because that involves potentially restoring from backup and doing an analysis of where it came from. And that'll cover most malware attacks. So what you want to worry about is their answer isn't, we have your backup and we can restore it.
Right. Now, these days, what you really want to see is some type of verbiage or actions around doing an investigation.
Right.
Now,
preserving evidence,
right,
stopping the spread, those kind of things. That's what you're looking for.
Yep.
And you would expect for them, if it's somebody you're vetting, to say something along the lines of, we plan to be part of your incident response team, and we would integrate with that. They would hopefully mention something along those lines if you ask them about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, David, like if I were to say to you, what are the 5 things that you consider the most important parts of that initial incident response if a client's hit with ransomware, what would that be? And I know you love it when I just throw something out like this, because it's my job.
It is your job.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some things I think that should happen immediately before you even call me. So part of their response should be, how are you going to handle it in the immediate seconds when it happens? Mm-hmm. So, are you going to show them how to unplug the network cable so that it doesn't spread? Or do you have something in place that would isolate that machine so that it doesn't spread? But after that, and after we're getting involved, we're certainly going to look at taking the machines that are infected, making sure that we've isolated those, identify what the ransomware is, and then start our investigation on how to remediate that and then preserve the evidence for that.
And who are you preserving that evidence for, David?
I am preserving the evidence for the client, for the potential investigating team that may come in after that, for the court case.
The forensics is the thing I was really hoping for right there, but you get it. That's the investigative team.
Yeah, that's the team after that.
Yeah, but
because there, and the reason why I say is it could be the team after that is because oftentimes it's going to be a business decision on the client's part to make that determination of, do you want to spend the money to do this, or are you going to take that chance?
Let me restate that. Technically, you are legally obligated to investigate this breach.
Mm-hmm.
This is a data breach. You are legally obligated to investigate, how did it happen? How did it get in? Was data exfiltrated? Are they still in? What was the dwell time? We just talked about dwell time.
Mm-hmm.
This thing could have been in there months. And I know of cases where we were called in on the second ransomware attack because the IT folks just restored on the first ransomware attack.
Mm.
And the folks that were in there wandering around for the previous 6 months before the first one, they got right back in, kept doing their thing, and then initiated another ransomware attack. So it's a business decision whether or not you're going to do an investigation. It's a business decision whether or not you're going to follow your legal obligations.
Well, what I'm referring to is the business decision of do we have to now bring in forensics, or is it something that the current IT people can do and give me enough information on where I can say I know that data did not get out and nobody got in. Sometimes that can happen, not a lot of times, but sometimes that can happen where you don't have to bring in forensics, but it doesn't happen a lot. And that's the business decision I'm talking about.
Well, and here's the thing is that there are tons of IT folks, and this gets back to the answers to the previous questions.
Mm-hmm.
If they are very well versed and they can document clearly, look, we saw this email come in, somebody clicked on it, it initiated this, it ran on this machine, it did this, it did that, and it all happened within a short period of time, and we can show you every single thing that occurred for this ransomware to launch, then you're probably good to go with that if the IT folks can do that.
Right.
If they cannot do that, and that is most of the time, as you mentioned, you're going to need forensics, period. I mean, I just don't know any other way to do it unless they can show from the minute it was launched how it got in.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people think that IT is security people. Like there's cybersecurity and forensics, and there's IT. They're two different things. I mean, you even say we're security first IT, but when it gets down to figuring out those things that the forensics folks do, you're like, oh yeah, not me.
No, I mean, because there's even multiple levels within that.
Yeah, so it's not something that most managed service providers have in their skill set to do forensics. Is that a fair statement?
Oh yeah.
And it's important to understand that in what they say their response is. You know, and I have these conversations all the time with the forensics people who get frustrated because the IT people wiped out stuff, didn't save logs, all this kind of thing. And then they claim that they knew everything was fine. Well, how can you? So what you want in this plan is you want to see that they're going to make sure the spread is stopped. They're going to isolate the machines. They're going to save logs everywhere they can, just like David said. And then they're going to come meet with you to see what your next steps are because they're part of your team. Mm-hmm. And at that point, they're going to need you to tell them, okay, here's what we know is what they're going to say. And if they can't say they're absolutely certain, and if they do say they're absolutely certain, you want them to put it in writing because you're going to need that for your documentation. Not because you don't, I mean, 5 years from now, if you say IT said we were okay, then you say, well, who was it? And what did they do? And what did they know? You're going to need to know that. So I'm not saying don't trust them. It's part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what they should be prepared to participate in.
Yeah. It very much is a crime scene. And so it has to be treated like a crime scene.
Yeah. Ransomware is crime. It's a criminal act.
Yep.
So you need to treat it that way. And so that's what you want to see in that response is not something simple of, well, we'll wipe the computers that are affected and we'll do a restore and we'll scan all of this. Right away, you've got a problem. And that answer probably comes when you don't have proper training.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you see not proper training on 1, you're going to probably see not proper answer on 3. Yeah.
And if they say they're going to do an investigation, I would even ask more questions about how and who and all that. Just see how far the rabbit hole goes.
Yeah.
Because I mean, in our firm, and I think we're probably better than most, but even in our firm, there's only a certain distance down that rabbit hole that we can go. Then we have third-party vendors that provide a level of forensics beyond that because we're using their tools. And then after that, then there's complete outsourced forensics teams that we would bring in. So when you say forensics, I mean, we're talking, we have 3 different levels of forensics that we have to deal with. So it's not an easy question.
Well, and also one of the things you need to keep in mind is you don't just follow what IT tells you to do, because you need to initiate a claim with your cybersecurity coverage. You need to get the proper things in line with whatever they require you to do. One of the big things that we're doing these days is we're breach coaches. So, because we actually know, well, we need IT to do this, we need forensics to do that. We got to talk to the attorneys to have them put this under privilege, and we can have a conversation about this, or we need to know their interpretation of this in the contract. And, there's all these different things, and we coordinate all the pieces as a breach coach. And through that, we know all these different attorneys and IT staff like David and the forensics firms. And so it creates an environment that the IT folks shouldn't be thinking they're the lead. They're not. The lead needs to be whoever's designated as the lead in the incident response plan, and whoever is the controlling, taking the lead according to your cybersecurity coverage, because there's always going to be somebody taking the lead.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of moving parts to do a proper investigation. And if you have to notify, there's a whole lot more moving parts. So you want to see them know that they have to be part of a team, and not just, we're going to handle the ransomware and we're done.
Yeah.
Yes.
All righty. So maybe they need to know how to buy Bitcoin.
Oh, good golly, Miss Mom.
I'm just kidding. All right. So number 4, what security applications will you use for my systems? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now this is when we were coming up with the list. It was a hard way to figure out how to ask this question and what you're looking for as an answer.
Yeah.
So you had a great analogy of why we're asking this question. But so David's analogy was, everybody needs to understand that when you are connected to the internet, your computer network lives in a high crime neighborhood. That's the way you need to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And in a high crime neighborhood, would you have a front door with just a standard doorknob and a doorknob lock? Nothing else. Or would you put several deadbolts and a few chains on it?
Mm-hmm.
And then I also want to know if somebody's paying attention that nobody's broken through or picked some of those locks or has the key. Somebody's got to be paying attention to if that's being messed with and if it's working.
Yeah, because this is your property, and you don't live anywhere close to it. So who's managing your property? Well,
that's the way you need to look at it.
That's what IT does, right? They're managing your property.
Yeah.
Well, do they know if somebody's kicked in the door? Do they know if somebody's slid up the window and snuck in from the window? They have to manage your property. Have to go look at it, right, to make sure it's still in good condition. It's the same thing with IT security.
So if you ask what security applications will you use, what kinds of answers are you looking for there, David?
The easiest way to look at it is you really kind of want to see multiple layers. So if they tell you we use X, well, that's probably not what you're looking for. You're looking for we use X, Y, and Z.
Exactly.
Because they all do different things, and you want to see, just like we talked about the multiple deadbolts and chains on your door, we want to see multiple things that are protecting you, not we're using Symantec or we're using McAfee or we're using Sophos or whatever. It doesn't matter. You can name any of them that you see off the shelf when you go down to your local store. It's not that any of those are bad. It's that you have to have multiple levels of those so that you have something that's going to catch things the other ones don't.
Right. And when they put those down, it'll be easy enough for you to just Google it and see the homepage of what that is.
Yeah.
And you're looking for things that are business, professional, not home.
Mm-hmm. And it needs to be monitored and managed as well, because you can go to any place and buy, even sometimes it may be the same product you can buy off the shelf somewhere, but the difference is your IT provider should be able to provide that product and monitor and manage it. So they're getting alerts. They're able to tell when it's scanning, that it scanned, did it find anything, did it clean something up? All that stuff should be getting reported back to them so they can keep an eye on it for you.
Right. And if it does find something, they're tracking it down.
Yep.
So that one's pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
The next one adds a layer of complexity.
Yeah, this one's tough. So this one is, how do you monitor and manage patches to my applications? And then what applications are you patching?
Right. Now, first, there's a lot of people that ask what patches are.
Right. So just patches are just updates. All right.
Security updates. That's what you're worried about.
Yes, security updates. Not just, we want to go to the next version of something.
Right. And security updates are released constantly.
Mm-hmm.
You never know. Like Microsoft has what everybody knew as Patch Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes it's insane how much, yesterday I was speaking in Dalton and I had everything set up, got the laptop all set up, and I was taking my MacBook and I had everything loaded, plugged it in, had it charged. I get there, I open it up and it says loading updates. Crap. And I'm so I'm having to wait, and it was a big one. So it took like 15 minutes while I was setting up everything else, and I'm like, well, at least it's not Windows, because then you don't know what you're gonna get. But if I'm gonna be in that position, I need to know that somebody's making sure that those security updates, when they come out, they're being loaded. Mm-hmm. So you got a timing thing and a monitoring thing. And then the thing that you and I really had a discussion about was what applications are included. So you go ahead on that one, brother.
Yeah. Well, let me first say that when people are patching your operating system, so that's, Windows or iOS, whatever, oftentimes they do what we call whitelisting. So when Microsoft throws out an update, we don't just push it out immediately. We allow that to be whitelisted. So there's a team of people that go in and they try to apply this patch or update to as many systems as they can on this test a network to make sure that it's going to be good to push out. And even then, there's still times that an update goes out and breaks things. But we try to reduce that from happening. So you will have a time frame where an update may have came out Tuesday, but you didn't get it until later in the week or the next week because of that. So,
but it's not 2 or 3 months later.
Right. It's not months later. The other thing is oftentimes IT companies rely too heavily on their systems, and because they have these things automated, they assume they're happening. And so you want to make sure they're actually looking to make sure these patches and updates to the operating system are happening. All right. Now, with that out of the way, one of the big issues that we have in IT is some of these platforms that we use will do what's called third-party patching, which means it's putting updates on software that is not your operating system. So it's other things like Microsoft Office and Adobe products and Apple software, and just name
browsers
it. There's just tons and tons and tons of software out there that you're running on your system or potentially running on your system. Who's keeping those up to date? And this is a big problem for IT because typically out of the box, our normal tools don't do very many of them. And so we have to then buy other platforms and tools that will do more of them. So first of all, a lot of IT companies don't buy the other platform that does more of them. And then secondly, even when they have that, there are still applications that it's not going to cover.
And we're talking about pretty common ones like QuickBooks.
Right. And so those things, somebody has to really manually, I don't know of a service, if there is one, somebody can email me and tell me, but I don't know of a service that is making sure those applications are always up to date. Now, I know they have, automatic updating of QuickBooks and all that, but who's looking to make sure that those things are being updated? That's a big problem for IT because every single client, every single network has tons of different software. Even within the same network, there's different software floating around everywhere.
Yes.
And keeping all that up to date keeps me up at night.
I know. Yeah, you want to see if the owner of the IT company stays up at night worrying about your systems. That's what you want to know. So, But anyway, that is a very important element because we talk about how important patching is. Patching is one of the top recommendations. It's like right up there at number 1 or 2 on best practices, no matter where you look.
Right. And that's the misconception that bothers me, is that it's such an important thing. Like you said, it's number 1 or number 2 thing you should do. But when IT companies are doing it, we're oftentimes not patching anything but the operating system or the operating system and a handful of other things. But what about all the rest?
Yeah. I want to know what's going on with everybody else.
Mm-hmm. So, you can't just say, well, we don't patch that. I mean, if you're providing IT service, the client assumes you're providing IT service. You're patching anything. So, you have to have a conversation. First of all, figure out what's even there, and then have conversations about how you're going to address those.
Agreed.
Number 6. Are you ready for number 6?
I'm ready.
All right. So number 6 question, how will you keep me up to date on things that I need to worry about in my business related to technology?
Very good. So what we really look for here is you don't want them to say, don't worry, I've got it.
No.
And you don't want them to say, well, we send a newsletter and that's it. You don't want them to say, I send you a letter every day.
Yeah.
You're looking for, hey, you're going to proactively have meetings with me to review where things are. And it doesn't have to be in person. It can be a phone call and whatnot. They can review reports. Here's where your network stands. Here's the things that we're monitoring for. These are the things that are changing. And, it's things like us talking about, hey, ransomware is getting a lot worse and a lot different. And we want to make sure everybody understands that. We're paying attention to it. But we wanted to let you know it's changing and we're having to adapt and things could be different. And we want to make sure you understand ransomware today is not what it was 2 years ago.
Mm-mm.
Or we wanted to let you know that the FBI announced that it appears that China is attacking managed service providers like us. They're actively attacking, trying to access our clients. And in a response to that, here's what we're doing.
Right.
It's those kind of things that are business conversations. And we're not talking about, tech support tells so-and-so. You want that to be a bit more, I don't know, it doesn't have to be CEO to CEO, but you certainly want, even David, I mean, would you consider like if you recorded a video once a quarter or once a month that told those things and sent it to your clients? I mean, would that be acceptable to you?
Yeah, I mean, we do that now, and especially when we have a threat that comes out that I believe the client should know about, or it could be something where the client most likely knows about it because it gets so much press coverage. And then, we want to be proactive and say, look, we know that you've heard about this new ransomware thing, and we want to tell you what it is, what it does, and should you be worried about it? And we've had clients before where we've said, look, if you're on this plan, if you're using this level of security that we offer, you're good. But if you don't, then you're not good. And then then those clients will typically call and go, oh my gosh, I thought I was good. And I'm like, no, remember we've had this security conversation before and you weren't interested.
Yeah. And you're not doing it as a sales thing. You're doing it more as let's make sure everybody understands where we stand. Let's get everybody on the same page.
Right. And it's really more to let the people know that have, they've purchased this better security. Well, they don't know what that security is doing for them because it's all smoke and mirrors, behind the scenes magic stuff, because it's not tangible. They don't know what it's doing. We know what it's doing. We see it blocking things hundreds of times a day, but the client has no idea. So we can't obviously send them the logs every single day like some people would want.
Now, they pay you to know that stuff and take care of them, but you also want to know from managing your business, and this gets back to having a culture of privacy and security.
Mm-hmm.
I don't just assume this stuff is happening. I want to hear and confirm it's happening.
Right. And so we just notify them of that. this is going on and this is what we're doing to address it. But there's no way we do it for everything, because I get, and I'm sure you do too, I get dozens of emails every day of all these vulnerabilities. I can't worry my clients on not even one a day, much less dozens a day.
No, I mean, the things you and I send back and forth between each other, there's tons of them I never even tell my team about. And I'm sure the same goes with you, is that if it's something that we need to know about, to keep an eye on, we don't see it as an immediate threat, but we're keeping an eye on it.
Yep.
I'm not going to tell you about that. We don't talk about those, anywhere. We just, hey, did you see this? Yeah, let's watch that and see, do you know anything else about it? That kind of stuff. But that should be between us until we have a firm understanding and know exactly what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, law enforcement, whether it's local or federal, they don't tell you about all the threats that come in day to day.
Oh, good Lord, we don't want to know.
You only hear about them when they're, they start gaining some momentum, or they're, substantiated to the point where the public needs to know. So that's the way we do our clients.
Mm-hmm. All right. So that's what you're looking for there, is that they don't have, that they are actively participating. And I think all of this really is what you're looking for, is they're actively participating in making sure you understand what's important to your business and how they're fixing it or taking care of it or monitoring for it.
Mm. And it also speaks to the level of how they're paying attention to what's out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's kind of indicative of, are they staying up to date on current threats and technology changes and issues? Because believe it or not, there's a ton of IT folks. If it doesn't pop up on an alert, they don't care.
That's true.
Yeah. So you just want to look for more interactive. That's all.
All right. And the last one, number 7.
Da, 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 da.
How will you make sure that my firewall and other network management devices are patched and up to date?
Now, this one is a particularly dicey one that gets on my nerves. I don't know about you. I've gone into sites where, we've had IT and the IT people are all prickly because we're in there looking around. And then all of a sudden, we look at the firewall and it hadn't had an update in 4 years.
Mm.
And it's not even under contract. And it's the single point of failure. Nobody's looking at logs. In fact, the log file is T9C. And what do you think about the security of that network? When the first thing that you look at and you see that, what do you think about the security of that network?
Yeah, I'm not feeling very good about it.
Right away, I'm very concerned. So I want to know what that plan is, and we worry about that. Is somebody looking at that and making sure the firmware is up to date, that nothing squirrely's going on, that no changes have been made to the configuration since, we checked it last quarter or whatever, that any changes that we did we make sure that we closed any accidental holes, those kind of things. What else? I mean, you got the firewall /UTM /whatever it is, but what other network management devices should you be updating?
Well, nowadays, almost everything on the network can be managed. I mean, we can even manage the power outlets.
Yeah.
Network switches are certainly managed. Wi-Fi access points are managed. I mean, like
routers.
I said, yeah.
Just plain old routers.
I mean, anything that plugs in anymore can just about be managed. And that's why you have to be so careful with the IoT devices.
Yeah. Because these questions could lead to all kinds of conversations like IoT and those kind of things. But you want a participatory partner in today's world. You want to trust that you can, if they answer these questions well, then you can trust that they're actively taking care of you. But periodically you want to run through certain things again, just to make sure nothing's changed. New management, new manager. It changes all the time.
Yeah, and there's oftentimes we find that clients are adding things to their network and they don't really understand that IT needs to be involved or at least notified.
Right. If you're going to start plugging something new in that you never plugged this in before, talk to somebody.
Yeah. I mean, we've had everything from I brought my own Wi-Fi access point in because I couldn't get on the one for the company to we had a new copier put in a few months ago to alarm company came in and plugged into the network, or a phone system came in and plugged into the network.
Got new security cameras plugged into the network.
There's just tons of things that I've seen over the years.
We got an Alexa.
Yeah. Because they oftentimes don't think that the Wi-Fi is the network.
I know. It's the air. If I don't touch a cord, it's not the network.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even now there are like network attached storage, or what we call NAS. They're getting attacked now, where the bad guys are trying to get in through those because they're essentially a computer sitting on your network. And who's looking at that? Who's making sure it's up to date?
And it's not exposed
correctly.
All right. So that's a pretty good list. And, and again, you don't have to understand all the answers, but I think we try to tell you the things you want to look for. And in that one, you want to make sure that they're saying, we do a quarterly review and document, because if you work with us, we're going to say, I would suggest that they do a quarterly review of those network devices, things like the firewall and so on and so forth. And at minimum, do the firewall, but, take down, save a backup copy of the configuration, take screenshots of it, something so that you have something to compare to next quarter to make sure nothing's different. And then, of course, if they are making changes, I would want to see them do the checklist and stuff, which we talked about. Mm-hmm. But it's those kind of answers that you're looking for, not crazy stuff. And if they are too many BS sounding, that's a red flag.
Well, the other thing I want to add too is if you're one of the clients, if you're the covered entity or whatever, don't blow off these meetings with IT. These things are extremely important. And I see that happen a lot where a client will say, well, things are running fine. I don't need to meet with you right now. Number one, things can quote unquote run fine and you could still have a crap load of problems going on. So these meetings need to happen. They need to happen frequently. And when I say frequently, every quarter or every 6 months or something like that. But they need
regularly.
To happen. Yes, they need to happen. And you need to pay attention to what's going on. And if there's decision makers that need to be in those meetings, then by all means, get them there. I understand the doctor's busy and all that. But sometimes these things can make or break your practice. You need to be in these meetings, make sure you're having them, pay attention, and don't blow them off.
Well, really and truly, no matter what kind of business you have right now, these are the kinds of questions you should be asking. No matter who it is, no matter what type of business, if you have a substantial network, you should be asking these types of questions and getting reasonable answers. In the not blowing it off, you can't have a full culture change where you worry about these things and are protecting your business and your consumers or patients or residents or whatever it is you want to say without that kind of attention from leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Very good point there, David. I'll pat you on the head.
Thank you.
All right. I think that's a good list. So I'm sure there's 100 things we could add, but we tried to cut it at 7.
Yep. And there's probably hundreds of IT companies that are glad that we did this, and there's probably thousands that are not glad that we did this.
I know, right?
All right, so there's your list for today. Thanks for listening to today's podcast. Remember, you can follow us and share us out on your favorite social media, and then you can rate us on whatever Apple decides to name its new thing. And just remember, for Donna and myself, that HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.